The courtroom was still, the kind of silence that clung to skin, when a sudden cry shattered it. Michael gripped the wooden bench as the sound echoed like a haunting call. "A baby here?" His pulse slammed in his throat as disbelief tangled with fear. Across the aisle, whispers rose like a storm, but none louder than the nurse stepping forward, her lips trembling. "Mr. Carter, she called for you." He blinked, shaking his head as though denial could erase the weight of her words. The judge's gavel struck, but the sound was distant, drowned beneath the cry. He muttered, "This isn't real. It can't be mine." Yet the cry swelled, soft and broken, pulling him deeper into a nightmare he never chose. The walls leaned in, the world shrinking, leaving only one unbearable truth. The silence before had been mercy. Michael pressed his palms to his face, trying to block the sound clawing through his mind. The cry was soft now, almost a whimper, but it burned sharper than a scream. He muttered, "It isn't mine, it can't be." Yet his heart raced as if it already knew the truth. The judge's words blurred into noise, drowned by the memory of choices made years ago. Choices he swore would never follow him here. Whispers from the gallery pressed against him like walls closing in, each syllable a weight. The nurse's eyes found his, unflinching, carrying the weight of something undeniable. He shook his head again, harder this time, but it didn't erase the image of the child or the feeling that this courtroom was no longer his. The child's whimper faded into silence, but it left echoes Michael couldn't escape. He clenched his jaw, staring at the floor as if answers hid in the cracks of the wood. The nurse shifted, rocking the infant, her voice steady but fragile as she repeated his name. Michael whispered, "No, don't say it again." His words carried no force, only fear. The silence after felt heavier than before, the kind that pressed against the chest until breathing was a chore. A memory slipped into him, unwanted, the face of someone he once loved, eyes filled with betrayal. He bit the inside of his cheek until it hurt, because pain was easier than the truth unraveling in front of strangers. The judge leaned forward, voice like gravel breaking silence, but Michael barely heard him. His ears still rang with the cry. He shifted in his seat, restless, trapped. The nurse didn't move away, her presence an anchor he couldn't tear free from. A bead of sweat slid down his temple, leaving a cold trail as he muttered again, "Not mine." His words cracked like brittle glass, lacking belief even as they left his lips. Around him, the gallery hushed, their stares cutting sharper than any verdict. He felt small under their gaze, cornered, as if every eye demanded he confess to something he hadn't yet admitted to himself. The nurse's arms shifted gently, the infant nestled closer, its tiny fist clutching at the air. Michael's chest tightened, breath shallow, the sound of fabric rustling sharper than thunder. He told himself not to look, but his eyes betrayed him, catching the small hand reaching. His lips parted, no sound escaping, only a tremor of disbelief. The moment stretched, slow and merciless, as if time wanted him to bear every ounce of weight. He whispered, "Please, don't let it be true." Yet, the silence that followed, heavy and absolute, felt like an answer. Michael sat in the dim courtroom corridor, his shoulders hunched, staring at the cracks in the tile as if they could swallow him whole. The cries were gone now, but their echo clung to him. His chest felt like stone, heavy, immovable. He whispered, "Why me?" But the words carried no answer. He remembered his father's harsh voice, the years of silence after his mother left, the loneliness he thought he'd buried. It all rose now, sharp as glass, because this child wasn't just flesh and blood. It was every wound he never wanted to face. He pressed his back against the wall, trying to steady his breath, but nothing slowed the storm inside. Nurse Anna approached quietly, her footsteps soft against the tiled floor. The infant nestled close in her arms. Michael didn't lift his head, but he felt her presence like a weight. She said softly, "She needs someone, Michael." He let out a bitter laugh that sounded more like a broken breath. "I'm not that someone," he muttered, but his eyes betrayed him, flicking toward the tiny hand peeking from the bundle. The sight was a dagger twisting in his chest. a reminder that denial couldn't erase blood. His lips trembled, torn between pushing the truth away and pulling it closer. Michael finally raised his eyes, his gaze colliding with Anna's. "Why now?" His voice cracked, brittle as old wood. Anna's eyes glistened, her lips tightening. "Because she has no one else," she said. He shook his head, anger flaring. "I barely survived my own life. I can't hold another's." Yet even as he spoke, the baby shifted in her arms, a faint sigh slipping free. It cut deeper than any accusation. He looked away, ashamed of how his heart betrayed him with every stolen glance. He had spent years building walls, and now a child he didn't know was breaking them down one cry at a time. Michael leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers gripping his temples. He muttered, "I can't be what she needs." The words were muffled, like he wanted them buried. Anna's voice grew firmer. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be there." He let out a harsh breath, remembering the nights he sat alone in a silent apartment, promising himself he'd never repeat the cycle his parents left him in. Thought of holding the child filled him with dread, not because she was fragile, but because she might need him. And needing meant he could fail. The infant stirred again, a soft coo slipping into the silence. Michael's head lifted involuntarily, his eyes locking onto the tiny bundle. For a moment, the world shrank to just that sound, fragile and unbearably real. He whispered, "I'm not ready." Anna stepped closer, lowering the child slightly, as though bridging the distance. "No one ever is," she said gently. His breath hitched, chest aching. He wanted to run, to slam the door on this moment. Yet his body betrayed him, leaning forward, drawn closer to the very thing he swore he couldn't face. Michael stepped out into the chill of late afternoon, the air sharp enough to sting his lungs. The courthouse doors slammed behind him, sealing in the cries that still rattled in his head. His sister Claire was waiting at the bottom of the steps, her arms crossed, her jaw set. She said, "You can't bring that child into our lives." The words landed like a verdict of their own, cold and merciless. Michael's throat tightened, but he managed. "She's mine." His voice cracked, betraying him. Claire's eyes narrowed, her face carved with disdain. "Blood isn't enough. You'll break her the way you break everything." He swallowed hard, fists clenching, but his silence told her she'd struck true. She turned slightly, her eyes cutting into him like glass. "Walk away before you ruin her too." Michael looked down at the cracked pavement, feeling the weight of her condemnation pressing him into the ground. Back inside, Michael dropped onto a bench, his breath shallow, chest pounding as if he had sprinted a mile. The courthouse lobby was alive with whispers, yet every word seemed directed at him. Old friends he once leaned on passed him without slowing, their eyes fixed on the floor. One muttered, "Irresponsible," another hissed, "Hell fail again." Each word cut into him like a blade sharpened by memory. Michael whispered, "I never asked for this," but the sound was so thin it felt devoured by the air before it reached his ears. He pressed his palms into the bench, the wood groaning faintly beneath the pressure of his hands. The whispers swelled into a chorus, every voice a reminder of his failures. He lowered his head until his forehead nearly touched his knees, his body folding into itself, trying to make himself smaller, as though disappearing might grant him mercy. Nurse Anna appeared again, her footsteps steady, her expression grave but gentle. She stopped in front of him, infant nestled against her chest, her arms protective. Her voice was low but firm. "They'll say what they want, but she still needs you." Michael let out a laugh, brittle and hollow. "They're right. I'll ruin her." His throat tightened around the words, and his chest heaved. Anna shook her head, eyes locked on his. "You're not your father, Michael." His entire body stiffened at the word, his breath faltering. Memories slammed into him, his father's hand crashing against a table, the door slamming as his mother walked away. Michael pressed his palms hard against his knees, as if grounding himself in the present. His voice shook as he muttered, "What if I am?" Anna's expression softened, but she stayed silent, the weight of his fear filling the corridor like smoke no one could clear. Later, outside in the gray light of the parking lot, Michael stood motionless beside his car, keys dangling in his hand, metal cold against his skin. His old friend Daniel strode toward him, face set in disapproval. "Don't do this," Daniel said, his tone sharp. Michael's head snapped up. "Do what?" His voice cracked under the strain. Daniel stepped closer, jaw tightening. "Take responsibility. You'll collapse, and she'll pay for it." Michael's lips parted in fury, then closed as doubt stabbed through. "Maybe she deserves better than me." His voice dropped, heavy with shame. Daniel scoffed, his expression cold. "She deserves someone, but not you." The cruelty hit like a punch, leaving Michael speechless. He turned his face away, eyes stinging with heat, but no tears fell. His hand gripped the car door, white-knuckled as the truth twisted inside him. Maybe Daniel was right. As night fell, Michael stumbled into a diner, its neon sign buzzing red against the dark sky. Inside, the booths were mostly empty, the air thick with stale coffee and fried food. He slid into a corner, his gray suit hanging loose, his shoulders slumped. A steaming cup sat before him, untouched. He stared at it, but his eyes drifted to the window, catching his reflection. A man hollowed out, almost unrecognizable. Conversations hummed around him, but every sound blurred into whispers of judgment. Claire's warning, Daniel's scorn, the gallery's mutters, all replayed louder than the clatter of dishes. His chest burned, breath shallow, each word echoing like a sentence. He pressed his forehead into his palm, whispering, "I can't breathe." The words were fragile, nearly lost in the noise, but in that moment, they felt truer than anything he had ever said. The courthouse air grew heavier as evening settled in, the last traces of daylight slipping through tall windows. Michael sat rigid, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles blanched. Claire entered with a folder in her grip, her steps sharp against the floor. She didn't look at him at first, her eyes fixed on the judge. Then with a voice steady but cold, she said, "It's time you knew the truth." Michael's body stiffened, his breath stalling. Claire's eyes flicked to the child in Anna's arms. "She isn't yours." The words rang in his ears, louder than any gavel, tearing through his chest. He shook his head violently, whispering, "No, don't say it." But Claire's face betrayed no hesitation. The truth was already out, and it was slicing him open. Michael rose to his feet, his body trembling. His voice cracked, desperate. "She's mine." Claire's lips tightened into a thin line. "She belongs to the truth, and you've been living in lies." Michael staggered back a step, disbelief clouding his face. Anna clutched the infant closer, her eyes darting between them, confusion etched into her features. Michael's words stumbled from his throat. "You knew? You kept this from me?" Claire's silence was louder than any admission. The weight of years of secrets pressed into the room, pressing into his lungs. He swayed slightly, his hand gripping the bench for balance as if the truth itself was too heavy to bear. Claire stepped closer, her voice sharpening. "You were never supposed to know. I kept it quiet to protect you, to protect us all." Michael's breath hitched, fury igniting. "Protect me. You've destroyed me." The room seemed smaller, every sound amplified by the silence that followed. Anna's lips parted, her whisper breaking through. "Then who?" Claire's gaze faltered for the first time, her shoulders stiffening. She spoke quietly, but every word landed like fire. "She's mine." The declaration hung heavy, impossible to absorb. Michael's face drained of color, his knees nearly buckling. "You lied to me," he choked. Claire's expression didn't waver, but her eyes betrayed a shadow of guilt. Michael's body shook as rage surged through him. His voice rose, raw and broken. "You stood there and watched me tear myself apart, while you knew all along." Claire's eyes glistened, though her jaw stayed tight. "I did it to shield you," she whispered. His laugh was sharp, bitter. "Shield me? You buried me alive." Anna's arms tightened around the infant as the baby stirred, the sound piercing the standoff. Michael's hands pressed to his face, dragging down slowly, his breath jagged. The walls of the courtroom seemed to close in, suffocating, every shadow holding the weight of betrayal. Silence clung to the room, broken only by the child's soft whimper. Michael dropped back onto the bench, his strength gone, his body hollow. His voice was barely audible. Everything I thought I knew, gone. Claire stepped back, her face pale but unyielding. "You were never meant to carry this," she said. Michael's eyes lifted to hers, filled with betrayal deeper than words. "You stole the choice from me." His whisper carried more weight than any scream. Anna shifted uneasily, her eyes searching Michael's face, as if bracing for his collapse. The child's tiny hand slipped free from the bundle, reaching into the still air, the only movement in a room carved apart by secrets. The courtroom boiled with tension, the air thick enough to choke. Michael rose, his chest heaving, eyes locked on Claire. "You lied to me!" he shouted, his voice raw with betrayal. Claire stood tall, her hands gripping the folder tightly, her face pale but unflinching. "I did what I had to do." Michael's fists trembled at his sides. "You stole my life. You stole her." The child whimpered in Anna's arms, the sound slicing through the rage like glass. The gallery leaned forward, whispers erupting into a storm, but Michael only saw his sister's face, the betrayal written deep in her features. He took a step closer, his body shaking as he spat. "You were supposed to protect me, not bury me." Judge Harris slammed the gavel, his voice booming. "Order!" But order was already lost. Michael turned to Anna, desperation flickering. "Tell me you didn't know." Anna shook her head, her voice trembling. "I didn't, Michael, not until today." He staggered back, grief breaking across his face like a storm. Claire's voice rang out, sharp as steel. "You were never strong enough to raise her." Michael whipped toward her, eyes burning. "And you are. You hid her, you lied about her, and now you claim her." The infant's cry rose higher, echoing against the walls, a haunting chorus. Every word, every sound felt like fire feeding a blaze no one could extinguish. Michael's voice cracked into fury. "She's not a burden. She's my blood." Claire shot back, her tone like a blade. "Blood doesn't make you a father." The room gasped, but Michael pressed forward, his body trembling, his eyes burning with tears he refused to shed. "You hid her because you thought I'd fail. Maybe I would. But you never gave me a chance." His voice rose, every word pulling his chest tighter. The gallery fell silent, the storm replaced by stunned stillness. Anna shifted uneasily, whispering, "Please, stop this." But neither sibling listened. The baby's cry swelled again, louder, the single voice that no gavel, no secret, no scream could silence. Michael collapsed into his words, shouting through clenched teeth. "Every scar I carry is because of this family. And now you want me to believe I don't deserve her?" Claire's voice cracked, the first tremor in her iron mask. "I wanted to protect her from you, from the chaos you bring." Michael stepped closer, his eyes fierce. "No, Claire, you wanted to protect your lies." The silence that followed was unbearable, as if the room itself recoiled. The infant's soft cry pierced again, fragile yet unrelenting. And Michael's head turned, his gaze falling on the child. His fury melted for a brief moment, leaving only raw desperation in its place. The climax burst like lightning. Michael's voice roared, breaking under the weight of his pain. "If she's not mine, then tell me why her cry feels like it's tearing me apart." Claire's eyes widened, her mask cracking fully as tears filled her gaze. For the first time, guilt painted her face. The gallery erupted, whispers colliding with gasps. Judge Harris slammed the gavel again, but the sound was drowned by the baby's wail. Michael's chest heaved, his arms falling open, a gesture both broken and defiant. His final words tore free, raw and guttural. "You can't erase what I feel. You can't erase what she means." Silence followed, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the sob of the child who bound them all. The courtroom had fallen into uneasy silence, broken only by the baby's faint whimper. Michael sat slumped on the bench, his hands open at his sides as though the fight had drained everything from him. Claire stood a few feet away, her shoulders stiff, her eyes red but unyielding. Judge Harris leaned forward, his voice gravelly but measured. "This family must decide. The court cannot mend what is broken inside your walls." Michael lifted his eyes slowly, his voice raw. "I never asked to be dragged here, but I won't walk away from her." His words trembled, yet they carried a weight that even Claire couldn't dismiss. Michael turned his head toward Anna, his voice barely audible. "Tell me, what do I do now?" Anna's gaze softened, her arms tightening around the child. "You don't run. That's all she needs from you right now." His chest ached at her words because they stripped away excuses he had clung to. Claire's eyes narrowed, but her lips trembled as though holding back more than judgment. Michael rubbed his palms against his knees, his breaths uneven, his body sagging. For the first time, the thought of staying, of choosing the harder path, pressed heavier than escape. He whispered, "I'm terrified," and the admission felt like both a wound and a step forward. Claire finally broke her silence, her voice sharp but edged with grief. "Do you even know what responsibility looks like? Do you know what sacrifice means?" Michael's head lifted, his eyes wet but steady. "I know what it feels like to be abandoned. I won't let her feel that." The words cracked, but held steady. Claire's face faltered, the mask slipping as guilt etched across her features. For a moment, she looked less like an accuser and more like a sister trapped by her own fear. The child shifted in Anna's arms, her tiny fist uncurling, reaching aimlessly into the still air. Michael's eyes followed the hand, his chest tightening with a pull he could no longer deny. The gallery was quiet now, the earlier whispers dissolved into uneasy silence. Judge Harris leaned back, his voice heavy with authority. "This is not about what you fear. It is about what you choose." Michael rose slowly, his legs unsteady, but his resolve firming with each step. He faced Anna and the child, his breath uneven. "I can't promise I won't fail, but I can promise I'll never leave her." Anna's lips parted, relief flickering through her tired eyes. Claire turned her face away, unable to meet his gaze, her shoulders trembling faintly. The baby stirred again, a soft coo slipping free, as though sealing the vow in soundless approval. Michael's voice dropped to a whisper, but the words carried across the room. "She may never forgive me for the mistakes I'll make, but she will never wonder if I wanted her." Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she turned her back, hiding the flood of emotions breaking through her mask. Anna exhaled slowly, shifting the infant toward Michael, the child's small face framed in the glow of fading light. Michael reached forward, his hands trembling, his entire body taut with fear and longing. The baby's fingers brushed his, and something inside him broke and mended in the same breath. The courtroom, once suffocating with rage, now stood in fragile stillness, every eye fixed on a choice sealed not by law, but by touch. The courtroom emptied slowly, but Michael remained seated, the child cradled awkwardly in his arms for the first time. His chest rose and fell unevenly, fear and wonder tangled inside him. Claire lingered near the doorway, her face pale, her hands trembling, though she tried to mask it. Anna stood nearby, silent, watching the fragile bond form in front of her eyes. Michael whispered, "She's so small." His words cracked, as if speaking them might break the moment itself. Claire's lips parted, but no words came, her guilt heavy and unspoken. The silence pressed against all of them, broken only by the baby's soft breathing, fragile and steady, the one sound that felt like life itself. Michael traced the baby's tiny fingers with his own trembling hand, his voice breaking. "I never thought I'd want this. I never thought I'd be enough." The child's hand curled around his finger, gripping with unexpected strength. His breath caught, and tears blurred his vision. Anna whispered softly, "Sometimes they choose us before we're ready." Michael laughed bitterly through his tears, shaking his head. "Or maybe she chose me because no one else would." Claire shifted, her body rigid, her eyes damp with unspoken regret. She whispered, almost to herself, "You weren't supposed to know." The words echoed hollow, too late to matter, too heavy to erase. The air in the courtroom grew heavier, as though every secret spoken had left scars on the walls. Michael lifted his gaze to Claire, his voice ragged. "You lied to save yourself, but she's the one who'll carry it." Claire's breath shuddered, her shoulders trembling, her lips unable to form a defense. Michael's tone cracked but sharpened. "You wanted to erase me from her life, but I'm here, and I won't disappear." His words rang out, not like a threat, but like a vow carved into stone. Anna exhaled deeply, a sound that carried relief and sorrow in equal measure. The child stirred faintly, as if the truth had unsettled her too, her soft cry swelling into the quiet space. Michael rocked the child gently, her cries softening. His words slipped out in a whisper, fragile but certain. "They tried to take everything from me, but they can't take you." His arms tightened protectively, his body trembling. Claire lowered her head, finally breaking, tears falling unchecked as her hands covered her face. Anna's eyes welled, though she turned slightly away, giving him the dignity of the moment. Michael kissed the infant's forehead, his lips lingering, his eyes closing. "I never wanted to be a father," he confessed, voice cracking. "But the second she called me hers, I knew I was." The silence that followed felt eternal, suspended between devastation and hope. The courtroom doors creaked as the last spectators slipped out, leaving only the broken family in the quiet space. Michael rose slowly, his legs unsteady, the child still in his arms. He turned toward the exit, his voice low but resolute. "She will know who I am." The words were final, sharp as a blade. Claire turned away, her tears falling freely, her silence louder than apology. Anna stepped closer, her voice soft. "This is only the beginning." Michael glanced at her, his eyes hollow yet fierce, then down at the child who clung to him unknowingly. His whisper carried into the silence, heavy and unforgettable. "I held her once, and that was enough."